Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chattin with CHAP. I am your host, Ginger Wade, and today we have a treat. So, Sarah Northrup is with us today, and we're going to be talking about some opportunities for your students who are graduating from high school and might not necessarily want to go to college. Although traditionally we all think, oh, college, that's where you go, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore. So, we're going to talk about a really cool option that you might not be aware of. So this will be an exciting conversation. But before we jump into that, I want to make you guys aware we are so excited. The hometown tour is coming up. So the hometown tour is something new that we're doing this year instead of the Midwinter Conference. We're starting out in the West in Warren and coming through Pittsburgh and State College. And we're going up north to the Poconos and Scranton area and coming back down to Lancaster all the week of March 9th through the 13th. And we are going to be meeting with Lauren Gideon of Education Independence. And she's going to be sharing with us some ideas about homeschooling and freedom in our educational experiences. And you know what? We're going to have dinner together too. So don't miss these opportunities. Go to chaponline.com events, and you can check out the hometown tour and register for it there. Also, we have Capital Day at the Capitol coming up April 21st. Registration is not open for that yet. Oh, actually, it might be. So go to the events tab also and get yourself registered for Capital Day, and we will see you there. You can tour our lovely Capitol and learn all about it. We're celebrating our 250th of our nation, so we'll have some fun 250th things going on there. And yeah, we'll hear from Will from HSLDA, and you don't want to miss it. So it's another opportunity for us to get together and chat. So check it out, chaponline.com, events tab. Okay, so Sarah, thank you so much for joining me here on Chat with Chat.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Sure, that's awesome. So, before we get into talking about like the details, I'm sure the parents are like, "Oh my goodness, tell me about all this stuff. I want to know." Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then like how you became interested in education, or specifically like post high school education and those sorts of things. So,
Sure. Yep. So I am a homeschool mom myself of four kids, and homeschooling was not easy for me. I kind of envy the families who just seem like they just love it. They've got the pile of books walking out of the library, and I always thought, oh boy, I wish that I could be that family. But homeschooling was harder for me than I think for some, right? And some of us struggle with it. But as a result of that, I started Firm Foundations Academy in 2019. And so that's still up and running. We have 115 students there. We're a hybrid program in Ephrata. And so that's been a great program. But then my kids started getting older. And so now my kids are between 18 and 25. And so they're all grown and partly flown, and a couple of grandbabies in there. So
oh, that's
um,
exciting. Yeah.
yeah, we're in a fun stage. But then, it prompted me to think about higher education and what does higher education look like today? Because it's different than when I went to school and it was just kind of there were no questions asked. You graduated from high school, you went to college, and you just had to know this is what I'm going to do, and you did it. And so I just feel like there's a lot of options today, and the landscape of the college is changing drastically.
hmm Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of scary to send your kid to college anymore because you don't know what's going to happen to them, how they're going to turn out. I mean, you're even hearing stories now about kids who are solid in their faith going to a school and then coming out totally confused and messed up. So I mean, that's certainly a concern for parents who, are raising up their kids. Any parents, and it's not even just homeschooling parents, right? Any parent. So, um, yeah. So as I've been, getting to know you, I met you a few times now, and I saw the organization that you are running, which we'll get into in just a minute. Um, I've come across this group called Christian Halls. I learned about it at a conference a little while ago, but it turns out that you know about Christian Halls because you ended up partnering with them, and it's this really cool idea about um, post high school education in more of a co-op format instead of sending your kids to these universities that are woke and teaching terrible things, and kids come out hating the country and they're communists. So, so tell us a little bit about this idea of Christian halls. Like what are they about? Like what is this concept?
Sure. Yeah. So Nick Ellis is the founder of Christian Halls, and he just has a passion for higher education. When I think he did like a turning point interview last winter, and he said, what is the goal of education? And he said the goal of education is to nurture your eternal soul. And it has real consequences for this world and for the next. Okay, so if we think about higher education as the nurturing of an eternal soul, that's a huge weight. Like it's so
Yes.
much bigger than us. It's so much bigger than what do you want to do after high school? I mean, it's so much bigger than that question. And
Yeah.
so I think they're starting to ask different questions. We're starting to ask different questions, which is who do you want to be? Right? Who are you going to grow into? What is it going to look like? What is your level of integrity and faithfulness? And, what kind of parent do you think you're going to be? We want to think about the who along with the what, but the what comes after because the who's going to drive the everything, right? So Christian Halls is they're pretty phenomenal with what they've done. They've worked with a number of colleges, and I can't say how many. I'm not personally part of their organization. I think when I looked into it, it was maybe 8 to 11 colleges at this point in time, colleges and universities. And so they partner with those organizations to bring college classes to co-op settings. Um, and so it's a great program, especially for homeschoolers, where you can get dual enrollment credits early. I think we see that a lot in Christian schools now. They're doing a lot of dual enrollment junior and senior year. And in homeschooling, some parents are taking advantage of that and sending their kids to like a local college, like an LBC, to get some dual enrollment credits. This is just one more option on the table.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. That is so important for us to be thinking about like who do you want to be? What type of I mean, what type of person do you want to be? Like what is your goal in that type of way in life? Because it's so much like in our society, and I don't know that it's outside of the United States, but in our society, it's like, what do you do? Like that's your defining thing. Like, what do you do? What do you do? Well, I'm a veterinarian or I'm a whatever, I'm a beautician or I'm a senator. I don't know. That is what defines you, but that is not what defines you. Like that's not the truth of what defines you, right? At least as Christians, right? That's not the defining factor of who we are. So I love the idea of taking that into the thought process of what am I going to do post high school? Like, what are those end goals and what would support that? I also really like the thought of doing things in a co-op setting, where it's more intimate. You can certainly, I don't know, there's not that pressure of when I was in school, there's always that pressure of making a wrong answer or whatever, or especially if you had a professor that was not particularly friendly to your belief system or whatever. So you could set up this type of a co-op setting with, like in a Christian co-op setting, like we do, right? So yeah, you could be working through these college courses still with that worldview intact and not being attacked, right?
Yeah.
So I think that
And
is
And they
excellent.
have a couple of different options for it. So I think there's three different options for the way that you can run classes. There's an online option. There's a um, person running. You can have a person that runs the class, and then it's proctored by somebody at the college,
Mhm.
or you can have somebody that's certified by the college. So
Okay.
there's a couple of different options. They all look a little bit different, but
Yeah, that's really
options
great.
are good.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's really great. I love that. So in this idea of a co-op setting for your post high school education, like, do you think is this something that's really just for kids who were planning on going to college, or would this work for someone who's, you know, do kids who want to do trades, does that really apply to them, that type of a setting? Like what do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I think it all depends on what the classes are and what their goals are. I feel like that's one of the things I always say. It depends on the student.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
one of my
absolutely.
mantras. But yeah, I think, when I think about the trades, I think they're vitally important. And I know like I want to be giving my money to a Christian carpenter and a Christian plumber. You know what I mean? It's like you want them, no matter what trade they're in, to have a really firm worldview, that their vocation is not just, I'm out here turning wrenches. No, I'm working to the glory of God. Like, no matter what vocation God calls me into, I'm doing it unto Him and for Him, you know? So I think like it's just a mindset shift, I guess.
I love that though, because I mean, there's so many people out there talking now about, speak with your money, right? Where are you putting your money? Like, don't shop here, don't shop there, or shop with these people because they are pro-life or they are Christian worldview or they, that type of thing. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I do too. Like there's a homeschool family that started a construction business in the Harrisburg area, and someone said they're really good and they're homeschoolers. And I was like, well, I'm definitely hiring them. So now whenever I have like drywall or anything like that needs done, I'm always calling them
Mhm.
because I want to support them, in what they're doing. So yeah, that's genius. I mean, that's great. That's what we should be doing. So Sarah, when I had met you, it was actually, I think you had sent CHAP some information about Worldview Institute when it was just coming out, was brand new. Which everybody out there is not to be confused with Worldview Academy, which is Bill Jack's organization, Biblical Worldview. That's a great camp, but this is Worldview Institute. So when I was introduced to it, kids could go there. There were classes, but you also apprenticed with like a local business to learn their business. And that was instead of, say, going to college or even like a Thaddeus Stevens trade school. It was doing this sort of thing. And you were doing this really cool thing where you were connecting with local businesses, like you were reaching out to all these local businesses to help you with this endeavor, which I think is awesome. I think it's great that there are businesses who are doing that. So now I know that this has morphed a little bit since you got kind of connected with the Christian Hall thing and that kind of a model. So tell us a little bit about Worldview Institute and what that looks like.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, so that's huge. Currently, we have a building in New Holland. I think we're trying to move a little bit more central, just the Lancaster area. But we're a Christian college alternative, so it's a 2-year program, and we're working with students between the ages of 18 and 21 who are really trying to discern what their calling is. What is God calling them to do? Who are they? What are they passionate about? What are they good at? What can they make money doing, right? What is the intersection of all of those things? How can they glorify God in their vocation? So they can come to our program. They get a lot of real world experience. We are all about localism, driving localism. So when students are with us, they are volunteering in local organizations, like just feet on the ground, seeing like what are the organizations in Lancaster County that have need that are serving our community and how can we get involved. We're also encouraging students to get involved in their local churches. We want them to understand who they are in Christ, who they are in the body of their church. What does it look like to be in a church body? How do you serve? What do we believe? Right? We want them to be diving in and really getting their feet muddy with all of those questions and wrestling and understanding what it is they believe and then owning it, right? And so like you said, we do have a partnership with Christian Halls, and through that partnership, we can offer 60 college credits. And so we have a full associate's degree through Southeastern University, and most of those classes are things like Christian worldview, apologetics, Old Testament, New Testament, Bible, financial planning. Um, Let me think. Sorry, I lost my train of thought
You're
there.
okay, that's
So
fine.
yeah,
There you
business,
go.
that's the other thing, business, entrepreneurship, because we want students to understand, when I'm talking to groups of students, I always say like at some point in time, you're going to be an employee or you're going to be an employer and you need to understand business, and so we take students into a business. They get paid apprenticeship with a local Christian owned business in their second semester each year. And so they can explore a couple of different options in terms of where they want to work. And we have them do a research project. They're really diving in. What is this business? What are their core values? Who's in charge? What are the departments? Where do I fit in to this whole scheme of things, and why is that important, right? So we want them to understand kind of like the big picture and
Yeah.
not just I'm a person that walks into work and I do a thing and then I leave, right? What's the
Yeah.
big picture? So,
Yeah, I actually love that because like that's not encouraged. Like you are just kind of encouraged to be like the worker bee, just go in, do what you're told to do. And I mean it's really that. Do what you're told to do. Like don't even think beyond that yourself. You know what I mean? Like and that's not what most employers are looking for. They're looking for people who want to think and can oh, I should do this thing. Like I had daughters that worked at a daughter that worked at a farmer market and she would finish this and then she'd clean up after that and then she'd go do this and then she'd clean that up and whatever. And then people would come back and be like, like you did all this stuff. Like, okay. Because like everybody else who works there just kind of stands around, they'll whip out the phone and and so I love that. I love that research that you have them doing to look into the whys and wherefores of the building, of the business, how they function, even why they're there, what's the purpose of them being there. Um, because I mean, that would help with entrepreneurship if they chose to start their own business, which,
definitely.
like you were saying, the localism in supporting Christian business owners, if they're starting their own thing and there's always going to be need for certain products, and it's great to create new things that aren't just owned by those folks who don't believe the way we do and are using their money for things that we don't care for. So I think that's wonderful. Another thing you said that I really, really like is about the church involvement. I find that like post high school to like young adult age is hard. Like
Mhm.
it's really hard because in high school, I mean, even when you're a senior, you start to be like, oh, I have senioritis and whatever. But you're involved with your youth group. They have events. Maybe you serve in at our church, they serve in the nursery or they, other ways that they serve in the church. But then like if they go away to college, you're away, so you're not really in your church community regularly. And then you kind of come back and some of your friends are there and some of them are not. And if you weren't plugged in before serving, maybe you don't know a lot of people in the place where you grew up. Or so I think it's vital to their faith walk to encourage them in that in being involved in their churches and serving and growing in that age bracket. I mean, isn't Ken Hanna's talked a lot too about you've lost them, they're gone, they fall off the planet when they go away to college, right? And they don't come back to church. So I love that about what you
Yeah.
guys are doing.
Yeah, I know we were talking about that before the call. I think the statistics they're really sobering. It's like 70%, but that doesn't speak into like how many might come back like after they have kids, right? I think that's a thing that happens. Like they have kids and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, how are we going to raise them? Oh yeah, I remember. I remember how
Yeah,
I was raised. That's important, right? But in the interim, like 70% is scary.
staggering. It's staggering, really. And I just any program that's encouraging kids to not only just go, make sure you're going to church, make sure you're understand, not just being like the naggy mom or whatever, but being like dig in, get involved, serve, get to know people. Honestly, it's the relationships that people
Mhm.
keep people coming, right? It's those relationships that because if you didn't have relationship, then it's just a rule. Then it's just a
Yeah.
thing we do, right? It's not it's the relationships that make it, you know, a big part of our lives that's so important. So I really like that you guys are doing that. Um, so would you call yourself like a gap year program or an instead of like what would you call Worldview Institute in that way? It's its own post high school thing, right? Because you said
Yes.
it's 3 years, right?
We're plowing new ground.
Yeah.
So we're calling ourselves a Christian college alternative. And that's because I think a gap year is largely focused on kids, they go away, right? I think a lot of gap years they're away for 6 or 9 months. They're doing some discipleship training, which is wonderful. But we're staying put. It's a 2-year program. So in some ways it's kind of like, community college meets trade school meets classical education, kind of all rolled into one. Like we want to be focused on the liberal arts, but we're focused on localism, we're focused on building worldview, we're focused on building local culture here in Lancaster. So I think that our mission is just different than that of a gap year. So we've landed on Christian college alternative.
I
Yep.
like that. I think that's really great. I think those concepts are really, really good. So, um, parents out there, even if you're not close to Lancaster and that's not an option for you, your kids, it's something to think about. It's something to think about as you work through things with your kids. Maybe not going to trade school or maybe not going to college, but maybe you can start this whole idea of, um, you know, building up understanding who you are in Christ and being connected with the church and still learning about businesses and stuff like that. Honestly, um, yeah, it's almost like your own like I don't know what do I want to look at like your own student directed learning program
Yeah. To a
kind of a
degree.
thing, which is
Yeah.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, Sarah, do you have any suggestions or advice for parents who are thinking about, well, they have junior high kids or senior high kids, or maybe they only have elementary kids, I don't know, but do you have any suggestions for them as their kids are growing older in contemplating or thinking about, what their kids will do in the future or directing their kids or any advice on the process or anything like that for our parents?
Yeah. Again, it's so individual, right? Our kids are such little individuals, which is great. And so I would say like meet them where they are. That's the first thing. You need to just know what are they passionate about? What are they good at? What could they do to make money, using those things? Does that require a college education? I think there are definitely a fair number of things that require a college education. Like I am not gonna get somebody to do brain surgery who has not, not gone to
Yeah.
college. I want to make sure, that, when I go to my dentist, like they know, they know what they're
Hmm.
doing. So I
Absolutely.
think there are definitely things that require a thorough, 4 or 8 year degree. But I think what colleges have been really, really good at is saying, you can come to college and you can get this piece of paper for this thing that you really don't need a degree for, right? And I think that's kind of what we're seeing is this shift in education. The cost has gone up. The cost has gone way up. And as we look at like people who are in our generation, I would say, I mean, I know a number of people who are still paying off their college loans. That was kind of a lie that that we bought into, And it's interesting too, right? Like anything else you go to buy a car, you go to buy a house, there we want to see your credit. How much money do you make? They want to know all the nitty-gritty of your financials, but as soon as you get to college, they're like, "No, like it's fine. It's fine. You can have as much money as you want." But then there's a consequence that can hurt on the other end. So, we know you want to look at your finances. Is it something that's important? And then think about like what are your 10-year goals? Now, it's a hard thing, I think, for people to sit down and say, what are your 10-year goals? But you might say, what do you want your life to look like? What comforts do you want in your life? Do you want to have a family? What are you thinking your life will look like? I think that's maybe like an easier question to ask than what's your 10-year goal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love that you keep mentioning the uniqueness of each of our kids because I mean that it's so important to do. And how we were trained, like through the public school system and even in the university model, is not that. Like, here's the prescribed
Mhm.
thing. You got to do these things, and this is what it looks like, and it's not different for anybody. And there you go. Hopefully, it'll work for you. But that's the beauty of homeschooling and the beauty of this type of program is you are tailoring it. Everything is tailored to help the child figure out who God made them to be, what are the gifts God, gave them, because He gave us skills and abilities for a reason. He
Yeah.
has a plan. So how can we use those gifts and abilities? So That is very good advice. And don't parents don't feel that pressure. Don't feel the pressure of doing what everybody else does. Feel free to do something differently. So Sarah, is there any other like final thoughts here as we wrap up? Any other thoughts or things that you want to share with parents regarding, helping their kids choose as they move forward, or not feeling the stress or pressure of everybody else doing things, or anything that comes to mind, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I know one of the things when I'm out talking to high school groups, I think, right, like when they're graduating, there is this pressure because a lot of people are saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to, what are you, it's like, it's like a broken record and they've just heard
Mhm.
it so many times. And so they think, I have to do something. What am I going to do? Right. But I think you and I know, and I would say most of your listeners know what you do after high school is most likely going to change. There's a possibility that what you go to college for is not going to, what you got your degree in is not going to be what you're going to be doing 10 years after graduating. I think the statistics say like 60% of students who are graduating are actually using their degree, right? So I think we just need to keep in mind that like it's not the end of the world, right? It's the beginning of a season. And that season is trying to discern what their gifts are, what they're good at, what they love, how can they glorify God, right? It's a season and we don't need to rush it. It's okay to take time. I think that's what we keep saying about the Worldview Institute is like we're helping students to take an intentional season of growth. We want them to really just wrestle with who they are in Christ. What do they love? How can they serve God in their community? And I think a lot of that has to do with presenting opportunities to them. You know, I don't know about you, but when I went to school, it was just like, I might want to be a nurse because my mom was a nurse and I knew that that was a thing, or maybe I'll be a teacher because I've been in school my whole life and that's like I didn't have like a whole lot of things that on my docket that I was familiar with and but I think the more we can expose students to the world of work that's out there, the more options they have to go, oh, like I didn't even know that existed. And how wonderful is that? That's me. That's what I want to do. We want them to just find that thing that pulls them in and they're passionate about it and they can grow in it and thrive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. It made me think of one of my daughters was almost like she's afraid to make a choice because she doesn't want to get stuck in something.
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck in something I don't like. And I had to encourage her in that, okay, well, if you don't like it, then you stop that and you pivot and do something else. Even if you start school and you're like, yeah, this isn't working. So you stop that and you turn and maybe you try work, whatever, or but taking that time to really like soul search, right? To search yourself, see, and really think about how God made you. But I think it's important also to just to encourage parents to encourage their students that they don't need to be afraid to
Mhm.
make a wrong choice. Because honestly, God uses it all, right? Even if what we might call a failure or a mistake or wasted time, he was teaching you something during all of that, right? And that's going to be used somewhere along the line. Maybe one day you'll be going, oh my word, if this wouldn't have happened to me, I wouldn't be able to do this thing. And who knows, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah.
well, this has been a really good conversation and very eye-opening into thinking about things. I love what Worldview is doing. I just love the biblical Christian foundation behind it and the thought of, letting God drive it, right? Like, how did God design you? Who did God make you to be? I think that is so, so important for young people growing up to kind of grasp that and understand it. So, if people would like to know more about Worldview Institute specifically, how can they either reach out to you or is there a website or something where people can learn about that?
Yeah. Yep. So our website is www.worldviewinstitute.net.
Got
And so people can go there, they can explore the program, they can look at, we have some generalities about the college classes that we offer. We do have an open house coming up January 20. 4th. That's Saturday. So we have a live open house and an in-person open house. And then I think we have another one February 21st. So really trying to get the word out to the community. And I know one thing that you mentioned that if I can can I back up for 1 second?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, just in terms of talking about people who don't live in Lancaster, one of the things we've been working on over the past year, in addition to providing college credits, is providing housing. And so we want to provide housing opportunities for people who want to come in and work with this model. We want to be a small organization, driving that, like I said, driving into businesses, into our volunteer organizations and churches in Lancaster County. But if they live in York or Harrisburg, a couple of hours away, we are doing like a host family program. So students would sign up. If they need a host family, we'll help to connect them with a family that has the room and is
Yeah.
willing to open it up for a student. So
That's cool. That's great. Well, it's awesome to see what's happening with Worldview because it's definitely different than when I first heard about it.
yeah,
So God is doing really cool things. So that's great. It's great to be able to chat with you about it. And I don't know. I just love it. I love this alternative option to all the overpriced junk that's
there's a
out
lot of
there
it. Yeah.
that is not going to help our kids anyway. So, yeah, so thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with that. I just love hearing about these new options and opportunities for kids. So, thank you very
Thank you
much.
for asking me. Yeah, it's been
Sure.
great. Thanks so much.
Great, great. Okay, everybody. Hey, thanks for tuning in. And if you have questions either for me or for Sarah, don't hesitate to comment below, or you can send us a message on Facebook. And or you can go to chaponline.com and use our contact form and we will get answers to your questions. And yeah, have a great week. I will see you next time. And don't forget to take your time and research all the possibilities as you train your children to follow Christ in all of life, especially as they make those steps out of the house on their own. Okay, we'll see you later now. Bye.
Bye.